Although there are many pros to retiring in the Philippines, the white sand beaches, widely spoken English, relatively low cost of living, just to name a few, there are still some things you must know before making a retirement decision. Let's start with the first item on our list. Major cities can be very crowded. Did you know that the capital city Manila has around 1.87 million people and is growing? There are more than 46,000 people per square mile. That's twice as dense as New York City. Keep in mind that during peak tourist seasons, you will see a spike in people too throughout the country. My wife and I traveled to Cebu this year and did not find it to be very crowded. But the story is a bit different if you're going into a big metro area or city. Some people may not mind having a lot of people around, including noise, while others may be okay with it. Which leads us into the next topic, lack of noise control. Okay, so this is a common complaint amongst many expats living in the Philippines from roosters going at it, not just when the sun comes up, but beforehand too, in the wee hours of the morning and throughout the day, to late night karaoke with loud singing. It is also not uncommon to hear loud motorbike sounds and dogs barking. One could say there is a lack of noise control, but it's important to remember that every country has different customs and ways of life. Now, the noises you hear and the noise levels will vary depending on exactly where you live, from more rural places to city centers. During my stay in Oslo, there was a lot of rooster noise, and although it didn't bother me, others, such as light sleepers, may have a more difficult time getting used to it. Another reason some may not choose the Philippines is due to natural disasters, especially during the rainy season. So there are about 18 to 20 typhoons a year, with the peak of the tropical cyclone season being from July through October. Let's take a look at the risk index of natural disasters in the Philippines. You may experience earthquakes, tsunamis, tropical cyclones, coastal flooding, etc. Of course, some areas may possess a greater risk than others. Although this could be looked at as a downside to retiring in the Philippines, awareness and preparation will be key. Next up is the driving conditions and risks. Okay, as is common in many parts of Asia, the roads in the Philippines can be quite chaotic and congested, especially in major urban areas. I definitely noticed this during my visit to the Philippines. Be prepared also to accept that drivers will often ignore traffic rules. The traffic rules are not strictly enforced either, so pedestrians must take extra care to ensure safety. Many expats living in the Philippines will also hire drivers to navigate the Filipino roads. But if you do drive yourself, you must be extra careful and drive defensively. Let's talk about having enough steady money each month. So there are two things for this section. Number one, it is crucial that you have a steady income supporting you throughout your entire stay in the Philippines. Number two, making sure you truly have enough each month. In my last video sharing pros to retiring in the Philippines, I mentioned the average cost of living is around $800 to $1,200, but it could be more. The truth is, under $1,000 a month may be difficult for many expats, especially those who are not used to living a different lifestyle with less Western options or accommodations. Especially in large cities like Manila, expats may be spending around $1,500 or even more. This number will certainly fluctuate though based on your personal preferences, lifestyle choices, and location. So why is it extra important to make sure you have steady income while in the Philippines? Because it can be extremely difficult to get a job making Philippine pesos. There is a lot of competition for the locals already. Secondly, starting a business, depending on what it is always a difficult task regardless of the country you live in. But in the Philippines, you must keep in mind the needs of locals and know if there is enough disposable income or not. If not, starting a business may be that much more difficult. Now on to buying property conditions. Retired expats are not allowed to own land, but can legally own a residence. The Philippine Condominium Act states that foreigners can own condo units, but under the stipulation that 60% of the building is owned by Filipinos. If you desire to buy a house, again, not the land, then you should consider entering into a long-term lease agreement with a Filipino landlord. Okay, so a few conditions exist where you could possibly buy land. Number one, if married to a Filipino, you can buy land, but the lease must be under your spouse's name. Your name will not be on the title as well. Number two, through a corporation. Although with owning land as an expat, there are still limits to how much land can be owned. And three, dual citizenship. Now, if you're looking to buy a property in the Philippines, just make sure to do an on-site inspection and an in-person walkthrough yourself beforehand. Next up is the topic of power outages. Now, this can be a very frustrating thing, especially for those who rely rely on power for working and don't have a close Starbucks or place of Wi-Fi nearby. Power outages are more common out of urban areas and can even happen several times a week. This can be very troublesome for those without solar panels or some type of generator. So it's just something to be expected. Onto the heat. The warm tropical climate in the Philippines is to be enjoyed year-round, right? Well, in the case of the months April and May, the temperature can rise significantly and become very uncomfortable, especially if the heat is combined with a power outage. Then you're left without AC or a fan to cool yourself down. As a retiree, this is something to be aware of. The hottest day in 2023 was a whopping 48 degrees Celsius or 118 degrees Fahrenheit in Butuan. The next reason is spotty Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi instability. The download speeds are not too bad, with the medium download speed of about 92.2 megabytes per second and upload speeds of 92.45 megabytes per second. Mobile internet download speeds, however, is less at 30 megabytes per second. So the Wi-Fi can be spotty depending on where you live and is more likely in rural areas versus very populated urban areas. But I'd like to share that during my stay, even in rural areas, I personally did not have any issues with my internet speed or connection, but again, that's not always the case and I wasn't there long term. Moderately high crime rate. The crime rates in the Philippines can be particularly high in certain neighborhoods and areas with larger populations and higher levels of unemployment. My first impression when visiting the Philippines was a little mixed. For example, I would see policemen around. I'd see them doing bag checks at malls, etc. Honestly, I wasn't too sure if it was because they were being extra safe or because it tends to be a little less safe. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts and experiences about safety in the Philippines. Let me know in the comment section below. Next is insufficient infrastructure in rural areas. So I want to illustrate this point with my experience. Our plan after arriving in Cebu was to take a 4+ hour bus ride to Oslop, where we would swim with whale sharks, which was super cool by the way. I was thinking the bus ride would be a smooth ride so I could catch up on some sleep from the red-eye flight that we had taken. Unfortunately, the ride was extremely bumpy most of the way. Even though I am considered a deep sleeper, I was woken up a lot, as well as my wife. So the roads in certain areas are really in need of improvement, as well as other infrastructure in rural areas. There is definitely a rural to urban migration from the locals. This is something to be prepared for. Last but not least, we have food taste and selection. Depending on where you live, you must learn to not expect a lot of options, especially when it comes to common foods in your home country, but be accustomed to what is available. For instance, there may be a long row of cereal in the grocery store, but the only options include cornflakes or some Cocoa Krispies. A few of the main fast food chains are Jollibee, which was started in the Philippines. There's also Subway, McDonald's, and Pizza Hut. But remember, the food offering at these locations may look and taste a little different, since these companies are primarily tailoring food to the local people's tastes and preferences. Besides these fast food chains, and depending on your location of course, you will need to get used to eating different foods. For me, at first, I was a little surprised by the diversity of the food and how some food has a sour flavor, but by the time I left, I really appreciated the different flavors. I also found delicious pastas and enjoyed eating a lot of the Filipino foods. So again, it will come down to your personal preferences, but don't expect the Philippines to start importing more of your favorite items. Instead, you'll need to get accustomed to eating different foods, and you may end up liking a lot of new dishes. I want to say that one of the most important attributes when moving abroad is adaptability and looking for the positives. So regardless of the topics covered in this video, you still may find yourself loving the Philippines. Also, please keep in mind that everyone has different feelings, opinions, and attitudes. So the best option, of course, would be to visit the country yourself first before making a decision as serious as retiring abroad in a new country and environment. As always, I want to wish you all the very best. Thank you for your love and support. I will catch you next video.